Hi everybody, my name's Lynn Hayes. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll be talking about the astrology from December 14th to the 21st, 2020. I'd like to start out just talking a bit about the solar eclipse, and I wrote a pretty big article about it, and I'll link that in the description box for you. I did talk quite extensively about it last week, but this is a fairly significant solar eclipse, especially for the chart of the United States. It happens on the day that the Electoral College meets. Of course, I won't know when I post this video what has happened because the video is posted at 7:30 in the morning on Monday, and we won't have the news until later that day. So it's hard to say what's going to happen. Hopefully, it'll be good news for all of us, whatever our beliefs. All eclipses come in pairs, so we had a lunar eclipse on the 30th. In the lunar eclipse, the sun was conjunct the north node. One thing that's significant about this eclipse is that it's squared by the planet Neptune. Neptune is the planet of spirituality, creativity. It can involve illusion and delusion. It can sometimes make it difficult to see what's real and what's not real. The effect of the eclipse can last about a week before and about a week after. So in your personal life, especially if you have any planets around 23 degrees of really any of the signs, you may be affected more personally than some others. There can be a door opening or some sort of a window of awakening of greater understanding with an eclipse. Eclipses are made by the presence of the nodes of the moon, and because the nodes of the moon are concerned with matters of fate, with the past and the future, this could be a time when some doors are opened or perhaps a window of awakening that brings us into a new phase of our life. Also this week we have Chiron turning direct. Chiron is the second to the last planet to change direction. I did talk about this last week also. The effect of Chiron right now is very strong. Chiron's job is to act as a poultice for our old wounds, our old sensitivities, old emotions, so that they can emerge and be healed. This effect of bringing the dark places into the light of the conscious mind, has a very powerful effect that can help us to heal some of these old patterns and create new pathways for us to move forward. When a planet is getting ready to change direction, its influence is more potent. It's like a shining laser beam of light on us. So we have this strong Chiron experience right now. It's going to be pretty stationary for the rest of the month. So we'll be feeling Chiron pretty strongly. This is a very good time to release old wounds, to let go of old feelings, old patterns of emotional reaction that maybe don't serve us anymore, especially because of the eclipse, which is going to open our eyes to some of these patterns, and then Chiron is there to help release them. We also, of course, this week on the 21st, which is the winter solstice, we have the conjunction of Jupiter to Saturn in Aquarius. I'm not going to spend much time on that because I did a whole separate video about that, and I'll link that in the description box. And if I can figure out how, I'll put a little card so you can just click on it. But this is a pretty significant shift, especially because it takes place right on the winter solstice. So we have Jupiter, which is brand new in Aquarius at 0 degrees. Saturn is brand new in Aquarius at 0 degrees. And the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius marks the beginning of a 200-year cycle of the conjunction in the element of air. We've just come from a 200-year cycle in Earth, and you'll learn a lot more about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in the video, which I'll link down below. At the winter solstice, though, we have the sun moving into Capricorn, and anytime the sun moves into any of the cardinal planets, which are Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, and Aries, this marks the changing of the seasons. These are important shifts of energy. We are going now from the darkness into the light in the northern hemisphere. Of course, my friends down under are going from their summer into the fall. But there is a change of season, there's a shift of energy here. And with Jupiter and Saturn both moving into Aquarius at the same time, we also have Mercury at 0 degrees Capricorn at the winter solstice. This is a tremendous shift of energy, and I think we're likely to feel it in our personal lives. First of all, the summer of retrogrades is behind us. The planets have picked up their normal speed. We have all of these planets changing signs. We have the winter solstice. So there's definitely a portal opening for change to happen. And how are we going to make that change happen in our own life? That's what we really need to consider this week as we emerge from the eclipse season and prepare for the winter solstice. The winter solstice tells an interesting story. The very word solstice means sol sistere in Latin, which means that the sun is standing still. The sun literally stands still. It appears not to move as it rises every morning for 3 days in the same place. After the 3-day period where the sun stands still, then we start to get the longer days. This feels very symbolic of being in a period of redirection. We've been in one experience, the sun stands still for 3 days, and then the light begins to expand. And I think we can really take that into our own lives as something that can inspire us to awaken in a different way, just like the sun is awakening now. That was a very quick update of the major cycles that we're looking at. And now let's talk about the week ahead. On Monday the 14th, we had the solar eclipse at 11:16 a.m. Eastern Time. Please adjust for your own locality. We also have Venus in Scorpio, and it will be sextile Jupiter. And over the next few days, it will transit Saturn and complete its passage harmonizing with the Capricorn planets. So with Venus harmonizing with Jupiter and Saturn over the next couple of days, this is a very positive time for relationships, with Venus in Scorpio, where relationships are meaningful, harmonizing first with Jupiter and then with Saturn. And then later that night at about 10:34 p.m., the moon will move into Capricorn. The moon will have been in Sagittarius, of course. The solar eclipse occurred at the new moon in Sagittarius at 23 degrees. And then Monday night, the moon moves from Sagittarius into Capricorn. When the moon is in Capricorn, we feel kind of an automatic sense of responsibility. We feel more dutiful. We're very aware of the things that we have to do. We might resist it. We might feel a little bit overburdened, but we're very conscious of what needs to be done. It's a very good time for organization, anything having to do with business or with creating any kind of structure. On Tuesday, December 15th, the Capricorn moon will square Chiron at 6:46 a.m. Eastern Time. Capricorn moon has an ability to kind of suck up the emotional issues and not really deal with them too often. And we may try to kind of brush that off because Capricorn doesn't really want to get into the emotional stuff. Capricorn just wants to get things done. Emotions take up too much time and energy. But with the moon in a square to Chiron, and remember this will only last for a couple of hours, we will likely be more sensitive and have maybe a little bit more emotional reactivity, certainly that morning, Eastern Time, afternoon if you're in Europe. Venus is still in Scorpio at that point, and it's going to make a sextile to Saturn. Saturn, being the ruler of Capricorn, being also very responsible. This is a time when our commitments to other people come very easily. We want to help others. We want to support others. It helps to strengthen our relationships for that day. But then Venus is going to move from Capricorn into Sagittarius at about 11:20 a.m. Eastern Time. When Venus moves into Sagittarius, and it will be there for a few weeks, all of our interactions with other people are lighter. They're more fun. We want to have more adventures with our friends. This usually occurs in December around the time of the winter holidays. Usually there's a lot of parties and getting together. This year, I hope you're not going to do any of those things as we try to fight this pandemic and try to get back to something approaching normal. But there's going to be a real temptation with Venus in Sagittarius to want to be out, interacting, having a good time, exploring, having adventures. On Wednesday, December 16th, the Capricorn moon will form a sextile to Neptune at about 5:11 a.m. Eastern Time. This is a beautiful time if you're up for anything creative, spiritual. It would be a wonderful time to wake up early if you're on the East Coast. If you're on the West Coast, it might be a little bit too early. It's a perfect time to venture into meditation or anything having to do with opening up the mind, expanding the senses. Neptune is very inspirational. It inspires creativity. It inspires love and an experience of magic. It inspires musicality. This is a wonderfully creative time, even if it's just for a few hours. Then between around 10 and 2, 10 a.m. in the morning, around 2 in the afternoon, the Capricorn moon will square Mars and conjunct Pluto. This is going to set up the upcoming square between Mars and Pluto, which doesn't happen until the 23rd, but they're moving into position now. So when the moon hits Mars and then Pluto, it acts as a translator for those two planets to connect. The square from Mars to Pluto, because Mars turned retrograde earlier this year, we've already seen 2 of those. So this is the 3rd, and Mars is traveling direct. It's traveling a lot more quickly now. I don't expect that to be too difficult for any of us. But when the Capricorn moon squares Mars, there can be a heightened sense of irritability and frustration. And then when the moon aspects Pluto, there can be a general sense of intensity. We can experience some power conflicts here with this Mars-Pluto balance. So Wednesday, December 16th would not be a very good day to try to pick a fight. Everybody's going to be kind of on alert. There's going to be a higher level of frustration and possibly anger. The moon conjuncts Jupiter at 29 degrees Capricorn at about 12:34 a.m. So that's very early in the morning. But the moon conjunct Jupiter at 29 degrees, that's sort of the threshold. It's a critical degree. It's the very last degree of the sign. It's sort of a make it or break it time. In the US, most of us will be asleep, of course, for this event, but it marks the last degree of Jupiter before it moves into Aquarius. And then the moon moves into Aquarius at about 1:26 a.m. So the moon is sort of pulling in this Aquarian energy. When we move from Capricorn to Aquarius, it's a very different experience. And remember, we've been under the influence of Capricorn all year, really. We had the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. We had Mars go into Capricorn and trigger Saturn and Pluto. We had Jupiter go into Capricorn, and all 4 of those were together for quite some time. And now we have Saturn, which has just moved into Aquarius. The moon moves into Aquarius, so it's at 0 degrees. And then Jupiter will move into Aquarius a couple of days after this. This is the portal where we go from Capricorn into Aquarius, where Capricorn is very constricted, it's a little bit repressive, it can feel kind of heavy, there's a lot of responsibility, we've been in lockdown, we can't do what we want, we have to do what we're required to do. These are Saturnian experiences. Saturn also rules Aquarius. And I talk about this extensively in the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction video. But Saturn does also rule Aquarius, and we often forget that because the modern ruler is Uranus. Where Saturn is repressive and serious, Uranus is inventive and a paradigm buster. Capricorn and Aquarius are very different. Both are under the influence of Saturn. When we are moving into this influence of Aquarius, yes, there's an emphasis on social justice and equality and humanity, but there's also a tendency to solidify our ideas into a lot of judgment and a lot of criticism. We're still dealing with Saturn here. There can be some coldness, a sense of isolation. Aquarius brings a new paradigm. Under the influence of Aquarius, we let go of the old way and we move into a new world, a new age, a new way of thinking about things. And of course, we're also at some point, nobody knows exactly when, but we're also moving from the Piscean age into the age of Aquarius. There are a number of different layers of this Aquarian shift. We have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius now. 2023, Pluto goes into Aquarius. All of these Aquarian influences are heightening the arrival of the age of Aquarius. And I'll be talking about that much more as we go on, but just know that for now, this is a big shift in our lives. Our lives are changing. The structures of our life, anything that's outmoded, anything that we can no longer use, is falling away. We have to recreate something new. And it's probably going to be something very different than what we had before. So we need to keep an open mind and be ready for it. The moon is very active on Thursday, December 17th. But one thing that's going to really help us with this paradigm shifting experience is when the moon squares Uranus in the afternoon of that day, Eastern time. The moon in Aquarius squaring Uranus in Taurus, this will only last for a couple of hours, this influence, but there's definitely a period of awakening here. That's kind of the theme, awakening, shaking us out of a sleep, shaking us out of an old pattern, something that isn't working for us. All of these tiny little lunar experiences can start to inspire us to make these changes and to see where change can happen. Friday, December 18th is pretty quiet as far as the planets are concerned. There is a harmonious sextile from the moon to Mars around 5-ish in the afternoon Eastern time. It's not something you'll probably even notice, but if there's anything that you want to get done, this harmonization between the moon and Mars can help motivate, inspire. It can help us to be more active and even add a little bit more physical energy. Saturday, December 19th, though, is a very active planetary day. The moon is going to move into Pisces at about 7:38 Eastern time. When the moon moves from Aquarius, which is very mental, very awake, into Pisces, which is very dreamy and creative, it's a big shift. All of these movements from the moon from one sign to another are pretty significant shifts of energies. Every sign in the zodiac reacts to the one before it, and the experiences of every sign are very different. We also have Jupiter moving into Aquarius at around 8:07 a.m. I don't think you're going to feel, oh, it's at 8 o'clock, Jupiter must have just gone into Aquarius. But remember, Saturn has gone into Aquarius, the moon went into Aquarius. Now we have Jupiter in Aquarius, even though the moon now has moved on into Pisces. The light of Aquarius has been lit in our psyche and in our experience, and the awakening has begun. This is a pretty significant day for relationships. Venus harmonizes in a trine to Chiron. Venus is in Sagittarius, where it's very open-minded, very expansive, and Chiron is in Aries. This would be a good day to resolve any issues that may be lingering in any of your relationships. We also have a conjunction of the Sun to Mercury in Sagittarius. This completes a pattern that began with the eclipse, with the Sun and the Moon and Mercury all pretty tightly conjunct in Sagittarius. But now the Sun is exactly conjunct Mercury. Traditional astrologers call this combust cazimi. They believe that this is a dangerous thing because Mercury is burned by the light of the sun. But I haven't found that to be true on a practical level. There's a lot of things in astrology that are theoretical, that make sense theoretically, but that don't actually make sense in the real world. When the sun is conjunct Mercury in the sky, it's true that Mercury is made invisible by the light of the sun. But the astrological effect is to really sharpen the mind, make anything having to do with communication, with thoughts, with ideas, with learning, all of those things become more important. Now, the solar aspects last for only a day or two, so this might bleed a little bit into the next day, but it's pretty much just a 1 or maybe 2 day influence. It's a very good day for writers, for communication, anything having to do with the transmission of information. On Sunday, December 20th, Mercury leaves Sagittarius for Capricorn. With Mercury moving into Capricorn, all of our communication and information processing becomes much more detail-oriented. It becomes much more purposeful and goal-oriented. Mercury in Capricorn is the perfect time if you're going to try to make any goals for 2021. We really couldn't do very much in 2020, but perhaps you'd like to make some goals in 2021. These few weeks with Mercury in Capricorn are the perfect time. We're thinking more practically, we're thinking about the details, we're thinking about what is possible. It's a very good time to set goals and to think in a more practical manner. That could be a little difficult because we still have the moon in Pisces, which is much more dreamy, imaginative, creative, and it transits Neptune on this day. There's a few hours which are very dreamy, very creative, very imaginative, very spiritual, not very organized, not very realistic. So that would not necessarily be a very good day to make an important decision. Yes, Mercury is in Capricorn where it's more practical, but this Pisces moon, Neptune, can be somewhat problematic when it comes to decision making or anything that requires all your marbles to be together. This won't last long though, because very early in the morning, around 5:20 a.m. on the 21st, which is Monday, the sun is going to move into Capricorn, and that marks the winter solstice. It also takes us into Capricorn season, where we become more practical. Mercury's already in Capricorn, the sun is in Capricorn. There's more of a focus on that which is practical and on building something for the future. At 5:32 p.m. that day on Monday, the moon is going to move into Aries. And of course, we'll have a new video then. But I do want to give you a little heads up, because on Monday the 21st, we will be heading right into that square between Mars and Pluto on the 23rd. Squares between Mars and Pluto can be a little problematic. Mars can be angry, it can be aggressive, it can be very assertive, certainly. And when Mars is square to Pluto, we can have power conflicts and just kind of general discomfort. It's not an ideal time really for anything that's sensitive, interpersonal problems. That's on the 23rd, which is Wednesday. We will have a new video before then. So I think that's a good place to end today's video. I want to thank you again for being with me and for joining me today. And I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time.